So let's do that now. You might want to turn the heat down a little bit for this operation, since it is a fairly narrow area that you're working on, a small area. And it will soften rapidly. What we're going to do is not only introduce the recurve, but we're also going to try and correct for any misalignment of the limbs at the same time. Great. Okay, two small notes. The first is, if you were to simply bend it like this, you'll notice that the pipe flattens itself. That's just its natural inclination. What you want to do is, as you recurve it like so, also apply a little bit of pressure laterally to try and get it to flatten and puff back up into a nice, more roundish shape. We don't necessarily need it to be more thick than wide. In fact, that might create some stability issues later, but we do want to prevent it from becoming over flat in the handle section. Okay, and just for comparison, I think that's pretty good. Yeah? So now, let's mark those other sections right there. Great. Let's mark those sections right here and here for deflexing. First, I'm just going to run that under cold water very quickly. If you're curious, the degree of deflex, I mean, it's extreme at this point. With the reflex that I've induced in the limbs, if I were to set this on the table, there is approximately 13 inches of reflex at this point. 13¼ inches of reflex total. But you don't need to be super precise. This is not, that big of a deal. You can have more, you can have less, you can have a more slightly curvy bow, you have more curvy bow. It's all up to your taste. But this is just the way I'm going to be doing it. So now, we want to measure, take the bow. I'm just going to use this as a guideline, but it's not essential that you do or don't do that. So say the deflex should be approximately here and here. Just for measuring, I think that's going to be about 5 inches on either side of the handle. Oh, 4 inches. 4 inches, and from the end of the handle over here, 4.5 maybe. So it's approximately the same, 4.5 inches on either side. That's the center to the center of the deflex. Let's go ahead and deflex it now. Centered at the deflex, I'm just going to do little figure eights like this. I like to focus on the back of the bow because that's the side that's going to be stretching the most. I try not to hit the sides too much, at least early on. Later on, yes. And then you do the belly. Again, I like to focus 1, 2, 3, 4. The belly, 1, 2, 3. Just a little bit less. And I'll turn the heat down a little bit more. And I like to go a few inches on either side of the bend to make it nice and even. But again, I try and focus on the back of the bow. That's the side that will have to stretch the farthest. The other side, much less. It'll have to compress. And as you can see, we can already begin the bend. But hit the sides just a tiny bit to soften them, and then you can grab the bow and start to deflex it. I would suggest not doing much more deflexing than this right here in one go. Deflex it about that much and then let it cool and wait and deflex it a little bit more. I wouldn't try and do all of it in one go. You do too much and I think you're going to find you're going to pinch the pipe off, it's going to collapse, or something bad could happen. So as you do it, just check the alignment and make sure it's straight. So I saw it was a little bit twisted, so I just grabbed it and torqued it back into alignment. If you don't do that, you'll have to correct it later, and like I always say, it's going to be harder later. Fixing problems when they crop up is definitely the easier way to do it. Now that it's a little bit firmer, you can go ahead a little bit more and just gently coax it if you want to get a little bit more out of it. Let's take a look at that. It's already looking very close. This bow is more flexible than the fiberglass one by far. So if we leave it a little bit less deflexed, I think it'll be fine, because once you put the recurves in and string it, it'll come into approximately this shape. Let's do the other limb now. This is turning out just great. But how crazy is that? I mean, it doesn't look at all even like a bow. So again, the belly of the bow I heat a little, the back of the bow I like to heat a lot. The sides almost not at all until the very end. If anybody has feedback, I'd very much like to know how you guys would like to see build-alongs like these. Do you prefer to see them in 15-minute installments, 10-minute installments, one 45-minute long video? I don't know what's most appropriate, and I don't know what everybody would like most, but I'd like to do whatever it is people would like to see. And if that's it, then I'd like to do it. Just tell me, and that way I can structure my videos to be more pleasant, more desirable, whatever you guys want. And gals. Okay, it's just starting to soften, so I'm going to focus on areas outside of the main bending point. The center of the bend. Let's just see if that's enough now. I'll grab it and start to deflex. It is enough to do about that much. You can feel it. If it goes much farther, it's going to start to pinch off and collapse. So, a little bit more heating is in order. Not much. And it looks like the center of the bend is a little too far down. Okay. Now you'd be surprised how much you can get out of just a little jolt of heat like I just gave it. It wasn't that much more than I had done before. In fact, it was very little in terms of time. But that was enough. See, now it's all set to go. Now it looks like a Scythian bow, more or less. Check the alignment. Eventually it's going to be so heavily recurved, decurved that you're going to want to look over the back of the bow to see the sides. Okay. I'd say it looks good to the handle on this side, and it looks good to the handle on this side. Maybe the side, the longer limb needs a tiny bit of tweaking right here or right here. But again, it's fairly well aligned, fairly well. I don't know how well you can see that. But looking good. Okay, so now it's a little cooler. I'm going to heat it just a tiny bit lower. Well, what do you think? I think that's pretty close, to be totally honest with you. So I'll call it a day with that, and let's take the terminal 4 inches, say, and we'll go ahead and finish them off. We will recurve them a little bit on the sharp side, and I'll show you what I use to do that. My tool for recurving them, when I need a very small radius, is, of all things, just a Morton salt container. is it's about, what, a 3-inch radius? So that's perfect when you need a nice sharp recurve. For this portion, this is one of the most dangerous operations, not in terms of safety, but in terms of problems that you can have. Because overheating the pipe is really easy to do at this stage. Because look at how narrow these sides are. If they overheat, they're just going to explode. I mean, they'll just tear. You'll see them start to brown and just rip themselves open. Sometimes, if it happens just at the very corner, that's not a problem because you're going to cut them away when you make the pin knocks. But let's try and avoid that. So focus on the flat surfaces, and you only want to proceed slowly, turn the heat down, and proceed slowly. Only once you notice the end of the pipe opening up and rounding, or wherever you see it rounding, that's when you can start to hit the sides of the bow. Otherwise, you will have problems. Especially with half-inch pipe. With 3/4-inch pipe, less. With 1-inch pipe, much less. But still, you're almost done. Take your time. You don't want to rush it at this point and ruin all the work that you've put into it. Half-inch pipe heats up fairly readily anyway, so there's no real need to get all panicked and bent out of shape. What you can do is see it is starting to puff, so now I can start to hit the sides, and that'll speed it up a little bit. Go a little further away, and you can just watch the mouth open up. You don't need it to be completely round, but you want it to be fairly soft. That should be good enough. I'm going to take that Morton salt container, and I'm going to make the recurve, just like I would on a pot. Holding it mostly in the center, curving it around. It's a pretty aggressive recurve and a very short little bow, but this is traditional. It'll look great. The heat from the bow tends to heat up the cellulose enough to make it somewhat plastic, and so the containers do become a little bit plastic. You're going to want to mind that and move around from point to point, because as it becomes more soft, it's not going to do the job quite as neatly as it needs to. I need to heat this a little bit more because it was hinging a little instead of bending evenly. The basic shape was right, but I want it to be a little bit more elegant. You see, since there's no sharp crease in the side, we can heat it from all sides now, and that'll be just as well. I want the mouth to be extremely soft so we can flatten that efficiently. Something that would probably be even better than a cellulose container like this, a cardboard container, would be if you had like a drinking bottle or a metal bottle or a ceramic cup, a coffee cup. That would probably be close to perfect. But this is what I typically use, and it does work in a pinch. Great. Now the cellulose, the cardboard, doesn't transmit heat, and my pad here that's protecting my hand also doesn't transmit heat very well. So what we're going to have to do is just hold it for a little bit longer. If you were using ceramic, as in a cup or something, it would lose heat a little bit more quickly, allowing you to, well, let go sooner. Something you can do is push air on it from the side. Let off just for a second, and by a second, tilt it, and then you can do that. That will help to cool it. Once it's mostly cooled, you can remove it and see your finished recurve. I'm just going to pass it under the water. And that's that. Let's do the exact same thing to the other side very quickly now. And at that point we're ready to cut our nocks and call it a finished bow. If anybody has any questions about this or any of the other bows that I've made, please just post them in the comments here. If you can, share them on Google+. Try and make sure that your posts have comments enabled, because otherwise I can't respond to them directly. It makes it very hard. Some people have posted comments and questions for me, and I have to answer them in a very awkward way by creating my own response to my own video, and I'm not sure whether or not they'll see that. So if you want me to respond to something, either join us down at the community on Google+, or make sure your posts are sharing to Google+, with comments enabled, because that way I can respond directly to you. And believe me, if you have questions and comments, I'd like to be able to respond directly. If you didn't want to put the general recurve in the limb from the beginning, remember I flattened it and then I bent it into a recurve right off the bat. If you didn't feel like doing that, you don't need to. You can wait until this point to do it. All you do is you heat the whole body of the limb like so, gently, just until you can deform it, and then you deform it over your knee, bending. It's a little bit more tricky, I think, just to get it right, because you have to heat a wide enough area of limb that you can make a nice arc. Otherwise, you're just going to end up creating a more sharp hinge like this, which is fine if that's what you're looking for, but if you want the gentle recurve, it's easier, in my opinion, to put it in right away. Okay, there we go. That is hot and ready to go. So, oops. See, there's the trick. Sometimes it is ballooning back into its old shape, but it's not really soft. So just another moment of heat and we should be there. But that fools me. Not infrequently. Let's see if I can move the camera just a touch. Test it. That's fine. Okay. So I like to pinch it and then rock it forward and sort of let the weight of the bow itself do the bending for me. Just keep my eye on it from the side to make sure that it's shaped right. You can lift the patch, the heating pad here, and peek at it. And move it back and forth, because you see it gets soft there. Now it's already fully hard. It can be challenging working like this, and there are better tools. A small juice bottle or copper glass would probably be a better tool. I don't have many straight-sided ones, and that's the problem. This happens to have just nice straight sides. You know what would work really well is a 3-inch PVC section. You could pick that up in the hardware store and make yourself a bending jig very, very easily. Since I'm going there very shortly, I may do just that very thing. Okay. We have the other recurve done now. Again, underwater. And there it is. I may heat this transition point just to flatten it and change it a little bit, but that's really the finished bow. The alignment is good. The shape is elegant. I think it's very much like what Ken's bow was, although with slightly more recurved the ends. Not Cia's per se, but the recurves are a little bit more intense, which was meant to have. But with fiberglass and wood, that's very hard to do. So I am very well satisfied with this. I can go and cut the nocks now, and I'll show you the finished bow. Welcome back. This is the finished bow. All I did is I cut nocks, and it's ready to string with my standard string, which I use on my 41-inch youth recurves. Those bows typically are 41 inches long, and with the terminal 4 to 6 inches recurve. This bow's a little bit more intensely reflex-deflexed, and there's the shape of it. Very asymmetric. It feels very good, actually, very cool bending. I think if I were going to do anything, I might deflex the lower limb a tiny bit more. But other than that, it's very beautiful. Those are minor changes which, until I shoot it, I'm not really certain how it's going to behave. But that's a very cool thing. So, the finished product. Alter these basic instructions and the design to your specifications and how you'd like it. Thanks for watching, YouTube.